Dear friends, Operator Starsky here, and this is In Time. Guys, please subscribe to this channel because you can find all kinds of recent updates from Ukraine analysis and all kinds of interesting guests, not including myself, of course, but I will be present here as well. Hopefully, we'll see you soon.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Downtime. Thank you for joining us. Oh, dear Lord. So this is, as Lance was saying in the live chat, this is our much more laid back, let our hair down, chill, talk about various subjects. One interesting one I'm going to bring up in a little bit. One of my favorite subjects to talk about when we do this show. Yeah, and then we're getting pinged about Russian base in Syria getting hit by missiles, and I was just like, do we have to? I don't mind when I'm on somebody else's show, especially if I happen to be on the shills and like there's breaking news and like World War III is breaking out. I was just like, oh, I'm on the shills. No, I'm not doing anything. I'm happy to bail. Don't anybody clip that for Dick, please. Anyways, so. Israeli missiles. There's way too many people involved in this. This is like Israeli missiles strike a base in Syria. Now, this is according to the Times of India and a couple of other, I would say, B tier or lower sources. Lance, what can you tell us about this?
What I've heard seems to indicate that the Russian base in Latakia, and just so everybody understands, the Russians have had that base in Latakia for probably 40, 50 years now. So it is nothing new. Anyway, apparently missiles struck near the base, inside the city area. Now, if you consider the fact that Hezbollah probably has personnel and headquarters stuff stationed near that base, since they received, I'm sure, some covert aid from the Russians, that makes a little sense. I think it's a ballsy move to be lobbing missiles near a Russian base, but, I'm not Benny.
Yeah. So basically, at present, we don't have any evidence that suggests that the base actually was struck.
Yeah, exactly.
So I did want to answer the other question in the live chat. Let's see. Well, and somebody had suggested that. What happens when I go through it too quickly? Well, I go through it faster to try to find what I'm looking for, but what that really means is about the missiles and us not catching it. Lance took a bullet for us and said blame the drugs and his gullibility. No, that's how we keep him on in time. The reason we missed that was our researchers, but basically it's he's heavily medicated and he can do the show. That's about it. Although otherwise he'd find a place that's got quality. Yeah. Sinister Porpoise, $2. What is the trolley problem's runtime complexity? Oh, for fuck's sake! Of course. You're going to do this now, Sinister. You're gonna start this now. We're going to have to combine philosophy and computing.
Ethics and computing.
Yeah. I have no idea. I'm sure there's a really good answer to that. I'm sure I hope we're gonna get one because I'd like to know. And the dock workers union strike, just so that people know, this is not our normal news thing, but since there's a couple of breaking stories, the dock workers strike has been postponed until the 15th. They say they've got a working agreement, and I think that that's really great for the Kamala Harris, who came out in full-throated support of it, but would have a real problem if it lasted for any length of time, because it would just tank the economy, and the incumbent is always blamed for whatever's happening with the economy, period, end of discussion. So we did add some emojis to the thing, and we're adding one for all of the major characters here on In Time. We're going to get a truck for 𝐒𝐨𝐿. I'm going to get a $400 suit. We're having problems with that. And for Lance, we're going to get a hippo. So speaking of my favorite stories.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Well, that was just a segue
I have no
into
connection with the story. Why?
Well, funny you should say that, because it turns out I've inadvertently spread the story around, and instead of saying that this was a story you had relayed to me originally about somebody else doing it, I may have been somewhat imprecise when it comes to the characters, and given you credit for the proctology exam on the hippo with the cattle prod. Now, the good news is...
I want to go on official record right now that I have never been involved, even peripherally, in the artificial insemination of farm animals and or zoo animals. Just getting that out there so there's no confusion.
Okay, so, and we all, of course, believe him. Nobody here has any doubts about it. I mean, we know, Lance, you have nothing to prove to anyone here. We all stand by you. We love you. And if this were true, would love you anyway, Lance. So you don't have to worry. Anyways, I may have inadvertently. I'm just saying. So if you hear rumors, now there was what's his name, Phil.
I could put you in touch with the.
That would be a good interview. It's like, what? Okay, here's what I want to know. I was like, at what point do you say, okay, we just murdered the hippo? He died with a smile on his face, admittedly, but we did kill him. Now, do we finish the job and report it? Do we finish the job and then run as fast as possible, or do we just give up and run? And I think the way the story was relayed to me was that after the hippo ejaculated and then died of a heart attack, they packaged up the sperm that they'd captured and then quietly snuck out of the building, leaving the deposit, in the appropriate receptacle. The hippo was alive when we saw him last.
He was alive when we saw him last.
Oh, I don't know. Okay, so when the guy is dating women, and I say, "What do you do for a living?" It's just like, well, it's funny you should ask. Sometimes a zebra has issues, and when a zebra really likes another zebra, but the chemistry isn't there, that's where I come in.
Yeah.
Exactly. As you guys can tell, this is a slightly different show than the regular one. We try to avoid hippo sex and or assassination on the mainstream and or channel, which we happen to be on now anyway. So, I think it's just about time we moved off of this subject. I think we've gotten about as far as I can. Although I agreed to write Lance's, help him write his biography, because he's had such an interesting life, and I thought we should just have the title of the biography be "So I Rogered a Hippo" by Commander Lance McMillan. He has not approved.
The hippo died.
Well, it's kind of like Leonard Nimoy. You know, it's like I am not Spock. I am Spock. I mean, you have to deny first, and we get it. We're there for you. I got your back. So so yeah, okay. So the union's done, and then oh my God. And somebody's going to have to explain Melania Trump to me. So I want to make one thing clear.
Yeah.
To the best of my understanding, and from sources that I trust, she's actually a very bright woman. I have a hard time believing that, considering who she's married to. If she married him just for the money, honestly, you know what? It's not what I would do with my life. But if it's something where all parties consented and were aware of that, which, given Trump who he is, I suspect that would be true, then if they're okay with it, they're okay with it. But you know, I'm a little bothered by the hypocrisy of the idea that she's for making a better world, and she's still married to this guy. Now, her book, her autobiography? I don't believe she wrote it herself, but regardless, her quote autobiography is coming out, and other than observing what Trump does, I don't know what she's going to have in it, but she did give a full-throated support of a woman's right to choose, and she came out with a black and white video, which I was thinking of airing, and now I had decided not to, and now I'm questioning that decision because I think it's kind of cruel to tell you about it and not show it to you. But it's creepy. It's her in black and white silhouette, and she's speaking with an accent so thick that it's a little hard to take her seriously, and I please don't air it. Yeah, well, you see, that was my thinking, and I also don't want to get a strike, so it's like what I'm going to do is I'm going to end up creeping out the entire audience, and I'm going to get paid for it with a strike, because I have no doubt that whatever organization released that video, if they work for the Trump organization, I don't want to. And she goes around and she just says, look, you know, every woman from infancy all the way up has the right to do whatever they want with their own body and this and that. And she makes and I think what she said was at least well written and compelling. But the hypocrisy struck me as I mean, you do realize you're married to Presidente grab him by the pussy. I mean, I'm not kidding. We had a vote on my blog as to, we had to give him the honorific because unfortunately he won, but it was going to be you know, what were we going to call him? And the vote, everyone who follows me voted for President Donald grab him by the pussy Trump. So that's, and the thing is, it's kind of funny, but it's really actually, if you think about it for more than half a second, absolutely terrible. And yeah, she's doing this. So, what are your thoughts? Have you seen the video? Do you know what I'm talking about?
I haven't seen the video, but I did read a transcript of it, and honestly, I think the statement that was made was a good one. You know, if any Democratic candidate had said those words, everybody would be kind of applauding. I agree with you on the thing of hypocrisy, but I also think it may not be entirely hypocritical. I think it may be a case of that's what she believes, and she's married to a guy who obviously doesn't, and then, you know, she's trying to protect herself and her son, their son, because I'm sure that Trump's lawyers got a pretty nasty prenup in place before they allowed her to marry. So I think she's basically sticking with it, and I suspect that they actually renegotiated that arrangement at the start of 2015 or something, because there was a lot of conjecture that they were on the outs, but going into a campaign season as you're getting divorced and you're running on the family values type crowd, it's bad. So it was agreed that, X, Y, and Z. So I think, yeah, that they're basically running two separate households, and they're married in name only for the most part. I'm not trying to say she's a good person. I'm just saying that statement, when you read it, I thought was pretty compelling.
Well, I appreciate that perspective. No, it was a good statement, and somebody mentioned in the live chat, and this was the other, was her "Be Better" campaign, and that came out as she was first lady, and I'm sitting there going, or no, it was "Be Best." The problem was it was "Be Best," and I thought Colbert just nailed it and summed it up, because it's talking about education and all this other stuff. For education, how about instead of "Be Best," let's just be better. I so I'm
better, and convince your husband to fire DeJoy.
Oh God, I got out of teaching. My last year teaching was the year before Trump got into office, and I still had a lot of friends, and they were telling me about what was going on in the Department of Education, and things were already bad at the school I was in, and the school I was in was one of the better ones. So, and they were telling me the standards by which they were going to determine, what constituted education, and it was being determined by people who had no experience in education. What's her name? Who would basically either she had homeschooled her kids, or I forget what it was, but and the proposals coming out of there, I'm like, you're going to murder education in this country, which I'm actually, between the two of us, I am by far the more gullible. And I don't want to get into a contest about that, because I'm not proud of how gullible I am, but that's incontestable. Is I was sitting there saying, like, wow, she's really stupid. And, most of the people I know are like, are you sure she's stupid? I was just like, this is going to destroy the Department of Education. He goes, and? It's like, so she's stupid. What's one of the major Republican Party platforms? Getting rid of the Department of Education? What better way to get rid of it than destroying it from the inside and then saying it's no good, and we got to you drive it into the tree and then complain that the car is no good. So, with Betsy Voss. Oh, dear Lord. So I watched a number of friends really lose any hope for education in America, and a lot of good teachers quit and retired early just to get out of the I was not above mocking them at first. I was like, I got out just in time, and they're like, yeah, we were sitting there going, you're getting out kind of early, Nick, don't you think? And I was just like, yeah. But yeah. Oh God, I'm trying to figure out, like, you take a look at.
But the thing that got me about DeVos is the whole idea was they were trying to push the privatization school voucher agenda very, very hard. Why? Well, because her family runs the company that does most of those schools. I mean, it was just this blatant case of profiting off of your position in federal government. It's just,
well, and I mean, that certainly didn't start with Dick Cheney, but I think he was the guy who showed. Yeah, he was the guy who mastered it and basically made it completely acceptable between him and Halliburton. And we've had that discussion with you in regards to how that affected the Iraq War. It's and I wouldn't like it under any set of circumstances, but if it's going to cause wars to last longer because they're not using a military to do exactly what it was already trained to do, and it's going to cost more money and more lives, yeah, Dick Cheney is basically the epitome of evil. I'm gonna. He's endorsing
pretty close.
He's endorsing Kamala. Do you realize what that did to my brain?
I know it tells you that there is at least a tiny little nugget of true patriot in there somewhere, where he realizes that Trump is actually one of the deadliest threats facing this country today.
I find it really scary when the voice of reason has to be Dick Cheney.
I know, it's insane.
Bombsheller gifted 5 in-time news memberships. Thank you so much for your generosity and for gifting the 5 memberships. It really helps, as you know, as most people watching know, we get demonetized most of the time. This show, maybe not, depending on YouTube's policy on hippo intercourse relationship discussions. But, you know, when we air like the... you know, we show, and those of you guys who've been around, you know this, we show the riots, we show what's happening. We've had, unfortunately, people die on our air. We've had it happen more than once. And so really it's you guys that keep us going, because it's not going to be the advertisers. And we don't do sponsorships. So, you know, and for the reason that we believe it interferes with our ability to look as objectively as we can. So, Blonde Bombsheller, thank you for picking a name that requires that kind of oral dexterity. Thank you very much for your support, because it really means a lot. So thank you. And Maya Atkinson, everybody knows already that you're the assistant head mod. You don't, the band hammer is not a toy. Just saying, we didn't put that in there for you. I'm getting concerned. I feel like okay. Everything's gonna be okay. We're praising Dick Cheney now. It was hard enough when it was Liz Cheney. I was just like, she had the name Cheney in it. Now it's like Dick Cheney is the voice of reason, and I'm just like, okay. And lo, Dick Cheney saved the United States of America, and he rode a horse called death, and the 7th seal was opened. I mean, this has to be apocalypse stuff. I mean, I haven't caught up on my Bible, but I'm thinking that where is I don't know where my Bible is right now. It's not a priority, I'll be honest. But I'm going to find it, because I'm pretty sure.
Close enough.
Those guys who are always predicting the end times, I'm basically to the point where I might actually believe them at this point. Paul Gilbert, £1, $1.99 for the algorithm, etc., etc. No joke. That algorithm, the likes, the subscribes, and leaving a comment. If you want to leave a comment in praise of, say, myself, please feel free to do so in the chat. If you'd like to leave a comment mocking anybody who's engaged in illicit hippo relations, please also feel free to leave that in the live chat. I'm sorry, Lance. I'm not normally this. I'm in a mood today, and you're the lucky man who's streaming with me.
I'm predicting that next Thursday I will have a splitting headache and not be able to join you.
I'll be lucky if that's the only consequence I get from this. Now you're like, are you sure Xandring wasn't going to be joining us tonight? Maybe even subbing? You know, you don't have to host every show, Nick. I'm just saying. Give the audience a break. So yeah, thank you for that. And you know, we got to make up some in the algorithm. It turns out if you take a year off, the algorithm does not appreciate you. $5 from UTV and Ham KD9W to help with the bills. Sir, you are a gentleman, and we really appreciate that. So thank you very much. We know you already gave us 5 memberships earlier, so thank you very much. So yeah, I was well, and I had predicted, and I think the problem with these kinds of predictions, as you well know, I had predicted that Trump would actually get a bump by Cheney's endorsement, and the reason is as follows. The people that would appeal to Cheney are actually classical conservatives, the old guard Republicans, of which there's a reasonable number, but they are drowned out because if they speak out against what's happening now, they're done. Their career is over. They saw it happen to the January 6th committee. Every one of them got wiped out. So you have essentially, the comparisons between Netanyahu and Trump are staggering. I mean, it's like you couldn't write this. People wouldn't believe it. But Trump is basically running not because he wants to be president. I'm pretty sure, in fact, he doesn't. He's running because if he doesn't, he's going to be in jail, which is Netanyahu's problem. So this gives the old guard cover to actually now say they're for Trump and be the loyal Republicans that everybody expects. Democrats fall in love, Republicans fall in line. They expect loyalty in general above most things, usually not above the Constitution, but in this case, that's where it is with Trump. Loyalty pledges. We've seen the 225 plan. If you're not loyal to the current administration, you are out. Doesn't matter whether you're good at your job. Doesn't matter whether you know better than the president how to, get the trains to run on time. You're going to be loyal to his ideology, or you're done. So, wow, there really was a point to all that rambling before I got there. Which of us is on the meds is what I want to know. So I was going to. So my theory was that this was actually going to produce a bump for Trump, because now people who didn't want to lie and say I'm supporting, or let me rephrase that. People who didn't, they were stuck because they weren't going to vote for Kamala because they felt it would be disloyal, but they didn't want to endorse Trump. Now they can sit there and endorse Trump and vote for Kamala guilt-free, because if Cheney is voting for Kamala, anyone can vote for Kamala. So now that bump didn't happen, but I think there's a number of other reasons where Kamala got a bump and they just, evened each other out. So there you go. What are your thoughts about the Cheney endorsement? Do you think it's going to have much of an impact?
I don't think so. He's, for lack of a better word, he's old news. He hasn't figured prominently in Republican politics for quite some time now. So, yeah, it may influence some old guard type Republicans who aren't comfortable with Trump to say, yeah, okay, if Cheney's not going to back this idiot, well, maybe it's safe for us not to as well. I don't think you're going to get so many people who will shift and cast their votes for Harris as you will people who simply won't cast a vote, do a write-in of Ronald Reagan or something ridiculous for president. That may be the result. But regardless, those are votes that otherwise might have gone.
RFK Jr. now, if my understanding on this is correct, has been siphoning votes off of Trump, and the reason is because he has endorsed Trump, thereby putting himself closer to Trump, but he can't get himself off the ballot like he promised to do in a number of states. So the people who like him, who prefer him, but would take Trump as second, will actually vote for him, because he tried to get himself off the ballot, and they said it's too late. You do not have the right. And really what they argued was, and I thought this was a legit argument, which was, said you're disenfranchising your own supporters. You're disenfranchising the people who you stood for and got the signatures for, and you got on the ballot. You are now on the ballot. You do not get to say that they don't get to vote for you. You passed that point. So in the battleground states where he was trying to get removed, he's now still on the ballot, meaning that he's endorsing Trump. But the people who like him, they're not on the left.
Effectively, so he's like a third party. Yeah. He's essentially a third party candidate. Yeah. And again, that might be something that siphons a few votes off. I think this is one of the elections where I don't think we're going to see a huge amount of surprises. And I think it's all going to boil down to the 7 key battleground states that they've identified, because all the others are pretty much locked in or leaning very heavily in one direction or the other and are unlikely to change. And I think that's the issue, is trying to find a way for both campaigns to still have a message that has national appeal, but really specifically tailor that message to the individual state that is up for grabs. And that becomes a marketing thing, and marketing means you need money. So it's who has the best war chest. From what I understand, donations to the Republicans are way, way down, and those that they are getting are large donations from the oligarch class. Want Trump back in office so that he'll give them another series of tax breaks. Whereas Harris is getting a fairly good stream of steady donations to keep her campaign running. And I think that may be something that features heavily in why the outcome goes the way it is.
Annette in the live chat made an interesting observation that I haven't thought much about, and I think I've seen her make it before, and I think she made it before in our live chat, and I haven't digested it yet, because part of me wants to say, well, look, everybody knows to worry about it, so it'll get handled, and I was like, that's assumptions are the mother of all fuck-ups. Let's assume for a second he loses. What happens then? How many of his supporters are willing to go violent, and how ready do you think we'll be for that?
That's a hard one to answer. I don't think there will be an organized insurrection, but I do suspect that there will be a number of very frustrated rogue elements that decide to do something. So I do anticipate some degree of violence as we get closer and closer to the election. And in the fallout result. I think Trump himself is likely to try to find a way to get out of the country if he loses.
You mentioned that, and
yeah.
I would like to, for me, he'll almost certainly succeed in my view. I mean, he's got enough money and he's got private jets, and the fact that I think he's been ordered not to leave the country, isn't going to be able to stop him. So it's a little unfortunate that it's going to be another example of
you're not the boss of me.
Risk, yeah. Well, and it's like you'd think. I mean, there has to be something they can do, like put like one of the iPod tags or whatever that is on his jet, and if it's headed in the direction of Venezuela, they send F-16s to intercept. But they're not going to do that, and so I mean. Maybe consequences for the pilot that flies him out, but on the flip side, I don't know that you can do that either. So I think he can leave and will. For me, that's almost. I mean, I'd like to see him in prison, but that's almost a better thing because I kind of like the idea.
I just want him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just want him in a position where he's out of the public eye and we never have to hear his damn name on the news again.
Well, and if he's out of the country, I mean, it's very hard, even if you're MAGA. And there's always going to be MAGA who's like, oh yeah, he's planning a comeback. And I don't know, he's going to come back with the Venezuelan army.
Bonnie Prince Charlie, the president over the water.
Yeah. And at that point, I just have to believe that it's going to become silly that half of MAGA is just like, I think we had our run. It was a good run. I think we're done. If he's cowering, hiding outside of the country, he was going to drain the swamp, and he ended up fleeing the country.
Yeah, but to go back to the original question about potential violence and such, I do think there will be some. I think it'll be fairly low level and containable, mostly rogue elements. There might be one or two little, militia groups that decide to do something, but, me and Bubba and Bubba's cousin, we're a militia group. Yeah, okay, great. 3 of you are going to do something stupid. That kind of thing. But I think that's going to become something that becomes a constant because one of the things that I don't think people are keying in on is if you look at the demographics, this is potentially the last time that the white supremacist movement is going to have a chance of legally getting their guy into office, because we're becoming a multicultural, mixed race society, and that majority is continually shrinking. So they can look at it and say, well, we have 50.1%, so we still have a chance. They somehow think that every white person is going to vote in favor of their white candidate, but, welcome to the dream scenario. The thing is, I think that when they realize the chance of that happening is gone, then it's going to become we're going to start a guerrilla movement. We're going to do stuff to take out. And I think we will see an increase in violence after the election, and after, Harris is sworn in. As people, what do you call it, grousing about losing the big ball game, they start doing stuff like that. So you're going to get, synagogues, black churches getting bombed or burned, lynchings, stuff on the rise. That kind of violence, where it's just kind of random terror. It's not really a campaign to achieve some end. It's just angry people who feel this is the only recourse they have to getting their political voice heard, which shows just how morally and politically bankrupt the movement really is.
So that's interesting. So I forget when white guys become the plurality and not the majority, but we're basically on the cusp of it. So if it hasn't happened already, I don't. It's been a while since I looked at the demographics. So all right, well that makes a lot of sense, and that is a common pattern: 2 steps forward, 1 step back. Kamala will be the first female president. She's also black, and she has. I think she's going to be a force to contend with, and I think that especially for white supremacists, there isn't going to be much more that's going to offend them than that. And
one of the things that I think is a cute little emoji thing that somebody did, and they took emoji faces of people smiling, and it was standard yellow smiley face, and there were 43 of them. I'll get the numbering wrong. I'm not doing the math in my head. Anyway, they were all yellow, and then there was a brown one, and then the next one was a clown. So if you continue that, then we get back to another yellow one, and then we're finally going to get the first female one. And I don't know what color you put in that circle, but you get what I'm saying here. And when you look at that pattern, it shows that the things are starting to change. And that clown is the last gasp of we're always going to have this long repeating row of yellow faces.
Yes. Sorry, I got distracted there for a second, but I do see what you're saying. There was one other piece of news actually that we had, and I was, I've got a problem. I have a confession to make, and I think it's important for people to be honest with their addictions and their problems. I have been guest hosting on the Shills for 3 days now, and it's I'm not proud of it, but you know, we all stumble down dark paths sometimes. And they've been great. They've been ingratiating, very warm and welcome. It's been actually a lot of fun. But the real problem with it is I use up all my jokes on that show, and then I come here and I'm just like, well, if you saw that show, it's just going to be I'm reusing the same jokes because I only have my well of jokes runs only so deep. But we're going after Giuliani quite a bit because he's Rudy Giuliani. And I think it was those were jokes. Yes. It's something. This is why we're supposed to have mods. I don't know what. Oh dear Lord. So those were jokes. I really set myself up for that one. Okay. I'm thinking we should just run with a closed live chat going forward. Speaking of loyalty oaths, okay, hold on. I'm going to ask Ascalon if we can get like a loyalty oath for the live chat. You know, I will not make fun of Mr. Souter. You know, just we'll work something out. I'm sure it can be done. So Giuliani, who, by the way, on top of just being a raging lunatic, and they had to bring back that clip of the testimony before Congress where the judge said, yeah, he came before us, and I said, do you have any evidence? And he said, no, we have lots of theories, but we don't have any evidence. This is what a lawyer said to the judge, thinking he could win.
That's an interesting thing that I'm going to go off on this tangent right now.
Please.
I think the O.J. Simpson trial kind of put the final nail in that little, plaque on the wall that says, you don't need facts to win the case if you can get public opinion behind you. And then you can replace facts with theory. And that's one of the problems that we have in the system right now is people are playing that game. It's like, well, it might have been space aliens. Oh, yeah, I know all about space aliens. That kind of nonsense. And people will buy into it. And we've ceased being a society that thinks facts are something that are important and worthy enough to present to solidify an argument, because as the whole MAGA movement attests, facts don't matter.
It's literally a post-truth society. It's really
exactly
bizarre. Which Generations Theory said was coming, so I guess we should have known.
Yeah.
So Giuliani, but the other thing about Giuliani is, for whatever reason, and I'm conflicted. I'm going to go with being a bad boy, and I'm going to make fun of him because it's not entirely his fault, and I get it, and it happens to everybody. But he's gotten to the point where he'll call up. He had gotten quite some time ago. You'll remember when all of this was starting. He would call up like an AP journalist and think he was talking to Donald Trump and be like, okay, we're all ready to go do all these illegal things. And then he'd leave voice messages, and then he'd butt dial so that he'd be in a meeting, and that meeting was being transmitted to a reporter, which does beg the question, why are so many reporters on his like friends list? I don't understand what they're doing on his phone. But we already knew about a bunch of them. Titan just sent me this one. He found this here for us, so thank you, Titan. According to the filing, Giuliani, who is leading Trump's legal team, texted the wrong number when he was attempting to pressure the GOP leader in Michigan to use the state's legislature to turn over the valid election results. So this is yet another one. I mean, there's been like a whole. I mean, this is wow. And Trump didn't fire him because he always keeps the best people. I have no idea. Remember when during the debate he said, "Oh, I saw it on TV." The dog.
Yeah, but remember, best people means people who are loyal to him.
And I think that's a huge part of it, but I think it's something else here too, which is, so remember he said, oh, well, they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats, and he said they're not doing that. He goes, well, I saw it on TV. He saw Giuliani on TV. Yeah. That's why Giuliani is, because he saw Giuliani on TV. Giuliani was big on TV on 9/11. So Giuliani, became a television star in one way or another on 9/11. And I think he's still, that's in his brain. He's like, I'm hiring that famous lawyer that everybody loves that was on television. I think that's what he's.
Let's extrapolate from that argument. How many of the people that are MAGAs are voting for him because he was on TV with his apprenticeship? Think about that.
Scary. Yeah, that's the scariest theory yet.
Yeah.
Just FYI, I've been on television. I mean, think about that for a second. I love Commander's face. It's got dark. I was just like,
I may have been on Italian television. I don't know, because they had an Italian news crew that was filming when we were in Somalia, getting ready to pull out to Somalia, and they were doing interviews. They took an interview with me. I don't think they took my thing, because I did one of those long-winded, intelligent, answers like I do here. People don't want that on the news. You want yes.
No. Yeah, it's or you have to. Would you say X, Y, and Z? And then what they really mean is X, Y, and Z. They're not saying yes, or they want you to repeat verbatim so they can get the sound bite, and then that's all they're going to play on the. Okay, yeah, so
I think the question was something along the lines: Do you think we accomplished what we set out to do when we first brought UN forces into Somalia? And I said, well, we gave them the opportunity, and the Somali people benefited from it while we were here, but we have decided the expense is not worth it, or something along those lines is what I said. And you can see why nobody's going to want to put that on the news.
Yep. Having said that, you've been promoted to In Time's new PR director. So, congratulations.
Lucky
I'll
me.
Need it. I'll need
You're
it now that I've been hanging out on the shills. What?
You're going to double my pay because I've gotten the
that was my thinking. That was. I'm glad we're on the same page. So that's. And by the way, just by even suggesting it, is legally binding tacit agreement. So we're good.
That's right.
Let's look at the contract. All right. So he now. So to remind people, this was in Michigan, and what they had done was, and the GOP leader was involved in this, and Michigan had a huge problem because the head of the GOP in Michigan had run for state attorney, and the current state attorney was a Democrat and was his opponent, and she did not want to prosecute her former opponent for that same job. Having said that, she's just like, this is a criminal and we need to do this, and she was hoping that the federal government would do it, and it looks like that's kind of what they're doing here. So that's really what Jack Smith is doing. So hopefully it seems to cover all of this, including the fake legislatures. Now, what they were trying to do was trying to get them certified as if they were real electors, try to get them certified as real electors. And so Giuliani, who decided that when engaging in criminal activities, it's always best to leave a paper trail, left a message for who he thought was the state GOP leader, who was trying to, and they had actually gotten them into the state house by getting a clerk out of bed to certify that they could actually be there, but in the end they weren't certified as electors. At any rate, he said, so I need you to pass a joint resolution from the we need you to pass a joint resolution from the Michigan legislature that states that the election is in dispute. There is an ongoing investigation by the legislature and, quote, the electors sent by Governor Whitmore are not the official electors of the state of Michigan and do not fall within the safe harbor deadline of December 8th under Michigan law. So what he's saying here, I mean, this strikes me as the smoking gun insofar as at least Giuliani explicitly saying, we want you to say that the legitimate electors are not legitimate and to certify our slate instead, and preparing for the halfway compromise that they were trying to get Pence to do, which was if there was two sets of electors to choose which ones he thought were genuine as opposed to which ones had actually been certified. Prosecutors say that this message did not make it to the head of the GOP because he dialed the wrong number.
And you know his billable hours are at some absurd rate. So, of course, with Trump, you never know if you're getting paid or not.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, how many of his lawyers have quit because he literally doesn't pay them?
Basically all of them. At this point, the only lawyers he gets are the ones who want the recognition of having worked the case, and even that they know is gonna make them look like buffoons in half the legal circles. But for some rich, stupid clients, I defended Trump. Isn't Trump the guy who's hanging out in like some pueblo in some southern country somewhere trying to escape the federal government? Yeah, I defended that guy. And then just hope they can make... Oh, dear Lord. So, and we saw this, of course, they... in order to continue the prosecution of Trump, they have to get around, once again, the Supreme Court, which has said that Trump has unlimited immunity for acts he did as president in his capacity as president, which I'm actually not opposed to some form of immunity for any number of reasons. But the fact that this case has to, be completely rewritten in order to point out that he was acting not as president when he was doing these things, but as a candidate who was trying to get himself reelected. It's like, I got a BA in philosophy because I like getting into the nuance and minutia, but the law has really found a way to make it just, I have no idea how anybody becomes a lawyer nowadays. There's just so many shenanigans. The truth really doesn't seem to matter anymore from what I can tell. And nobody really cares about justice, which I'm not entirely convinced they cared about that much in the first place. I think they cared more about civility and trying to just maintain order. And so, you split the baby, and if you're lucky, both sides walk away unhappy and decide never to get into a dispute again, because the last thing they want to do is end up in front of a judge. But now it's sort of like, under the leadership of just spectacular justices like Clarence Thomas and Alito. It's just sort of like, it's
every time I hear those names. Every time I hear those names, I can hear the echo of FDR's voice of names which will live in infamy.
Oh my God. What's the joke?
On the same level as Benedict Arnold.
Yeah. I hope so. I who knows? He's managed to escape so far. And this argument, I really thought that Roberts, at a minimum, wanted to be remembered as if at a minimum, like a significantly better than average Supreme Court Chief Justice. He's not going to get that. He's not going to get even close to that. He's going to be remembered, in my view, as one of the lower tier, considering how much he's been protecting the corruption on his Supreme Court and saying, well, he's basically, he's given the Nixon defense. Well, we're the highest court in the land. Nobody can judge us. So if we say it's okay, then it's okay. So why have any oversight over us? It's just like, you can see why they get along with Trump.
It's one of the serious inherent flaws in the system that was set up at the establishment of the nation, which is we had a system where you could have the president removed by Congress. You have a way for Congress to purge itself of bad members. But once you got a seat on the Supreme Court, you were God. Nothing could touch you. And it's still that way. I mean, yeah, I know technically you can impeach, but the process you have to go through is just Byzantine in its complexity. Nobody's ever going to be able to pull it off. And that's something I think that needs to be done, is the Constitution needs to be amended so that somebody on the court can be held accountable for doing improper things. And I think we've got plenty of people on the court right now that have been doing improper things for a long time.
And along those lines, I think the one thing the founding fathers did was they made it difficult to pass laws, but it's actually almost harder to get them removed once they're in place. Instead, we just sort of ignore them, and then we're like, nobody follows that law anymore. But the law is still there, and that creates a problem because when people are looking for, I mean, there is a law in the on Massachusetts. It's one of the old blue laws. You cannot bathe on any day except Sunday or with a doctor's note or a doctor's permission. And that law comes from sometime in the 1800s. It's still technically there. Now, does it get used very much? No. Is there some smart-ass lawyer who's going to sit there and say, well, according to the law, Your Honor, And then it's like you see all those books behind the lawyers, and you always say, do they really need those books? Yes, they need every one of those books, every single one, because anytime you reference, it's common law. If they have to find a case reference, they have to go find it in the book, flip through the whole friggin' book, and then find it, and then they've got numbers and their whole it's worse than the library. It's just insane. I don't know how you fix that, and I'm a little concerned because 𝐒𝐨𝐿𝐼𝐼 does watch the show on occasion, and I know I'm going to get a call when we go down. He's like, so you're saying you're for tort reform? Is that what you're saying? Because I think I've heard people say that before, and they're called, say it with me, Nick. Friggin' smart ass. I'm going to stop telling him what time we air. Speaking of, I actually was going to open with this, but I since we're here now and we're talking about it, and we lucked out. We were able to get a former member of the Israeli Defense Force. They have a lot fewer ranks, and we're going to talk about this, so it's hard to, at first, like, is he a staff sergeant or what? We'll talk about it tomorrow, but he was in the Israeli Defense Force. He's been deployed in Gaza. He's been deployed in the West Bank. He has some interesting political views, but he is in Israel right now. We did our pre-show interview. He and I did it while the missiles were falling from Iran. He made a couple of observations that I thought were interesting. I was trying to talk to him to feel him out as a guest, and I said, and he said, these feel different. And I was like, well, what do you mean they feel different? He goes, well, you can always tell when we're getting bombed by a country or by someone who has a GDP. He's like, it's when Iran's sending missiles, it's a little different than what. But he pointed out something else that I thought was very interesting. He said, nobody in Israel is going to tell you this. But as part of our building codes, obviously, if you think about it, every single building has to have a bomb shelter. Every one. So when the missiles start coming, and we know when they're going to come, we, for the most part, can be completely safe. There aren't any bomb shelters in Gaza. There aren't any bomb shelters in the West Bank. There are no bomb shelters in Lebanon. Just aren't.
Yep.
So there's already a disparity, not just in the strength of the armies that are going at it, but the ability of each side to withstand the attacks that they're being dealt. So I think he's going to be a very interesting guest. We're going to discuss with him both the internal culture and politics in Israel as he sees it, having living there. Also, we're going to discuss the structure and capabilities and sort of culture of the Israeli Defense Force and what he sees from his vantage point in terms of what is going on with Israel and its neighbors. And as I said before, we've already done a pre-show interview with him. I think he's going to be one of our better guests. We're looking forward to it. That's tomorrow night, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and he will be with us live from Israel. So we're going to have that discussion, and I hope you guys will make sure to ring the bell so that you get the notification and or join us on the Discord, and we'll be dropping it there too. Or you can rely on YouTube. I don't know why you would do that, since YouTube notifications, let's just say, I think Boeing manufactured YouTube's notification system. I'm just saying. It's got that kind of reliability. It's got that kind of feel to it. Anyways, I don't know. Is there anything else that you wanted to hit before we?
The only other thing I think is worth mentioning, discussing, is the reaction to the flooding in West, and FEMA's response, and the fact that GOP are trying to point at Biden administration not reacting properly and causing more damage than the storm did, and all this kind of garbage. They ran out of money, so they can't do the disaster relief, and all the money went to the Ukrainians, and all this nonsense. I don't think there's any justification for any of those arguments. I think this is desperate people throwing noodles at the wall, hoping at least one of them will stick. I think overall, from what I've heard, the response is about as good as one can normally expect in these situations. I'd be curious to hear any of our viewers have an alternate view about it.
Well, and we know a few people who've actually been through it, so it's another one where we can also have that discussion. And maybe bring some on to discuss it. There's actually you bring up a couple of things though that I did want to mention, because we've had this, and some of this is, in my view, misinformation going around. We talked with Starsky about this when he came on too, because one of the things we've been saying is, look, and I understand in Ukraine there is frustration when we start getting caught up in the Middle East, because it makes it very easy for people here to say, well, shouldn't we be worried about the Middle East instead of Ukraine? And one of the things that Starsky had pointed out, especially with the election coming up, and as you've said about Trump and the fact that how much of his money he owes to Deutsche Bank, which laundered it from the Russian, is it a Russian? I forget the name of the Russian central bank, but it's Putin's pocketbook.
Yeah.
So
yeah, exactly.
It's so when you're voting for Trump, you're voting against Ukraine, and when you're not dealing with the issues that are being caused, and the fact that the U.S. has to deal with multiple problems simultaneously is the fact that every country needs to do. We here, cover, of course, all of it, but I was going to plagiarize. So there's a guy named Greg Terry, and I don't know if you've seen him around. He's a minister. Well, he's a preacher. I don't hold that against him. I don't, because he's a sweetheart. He's a nice guy, and if you've seen his videos and if you see what he goes out and he does, he really cares, and he goes to the.
And he has the most beautiful revival tent.
Yeah, exactly. You'd actually know him better. That's the funny thing is because we've been down for a year. I didn't realize you know him better because you've been hanging with him on the shills. So you of course know him a lot better than I do. But he had said what I was going to do was I was going to plagiarize because I was watching him. It was I think yesterday I was watching him, and he was talking about. Why it was oh God, you see, now I've completely lost my train of thought. I was going to just plagiarize it, but now he's showed up in our live chat, so I was just like, I have to give him credit. Greg Terry, very nice to see you. Thank you so much. Oh my God, now Dawson showed up. Okay, whoa, look at the time. So thank you guys all so much. I just, we have a hard limit of 9:09 Eastern. It was just and so just as a
pure coincidence.
Yeah, so just so that we can maintain some level of respect and dignity, Greg, please don't go back to the hippo rogering elements of the show. That's fake news. It didn't happen. We didn't have that discussion. Dick,
Right.
Please don't go back to me talking about having to go into rehab because I was co-host of the Shills for 3 days. That didn't happen either. That was also fake news. So I'm glad you guys are here. Do everyone a favor and don't watch what led up to this moment. I think the past is the past. Sleeping dogs lie. We're good. Anyways, Greg Terry, I saw his work also I did not know Pete. I had seen him on the Shills a couple of times. I was still, really just trying to deal with my family life and staying out of social media. But I did on occasion, if you don't tell anyone, I did watch the Shills on occasion. So I was familiar with the work that was being done, and I did see the video where Greg delivered the last truck, and he was talking about why the armor was important, why the trucks, which by the way, the axle went up to his knee, and I'm sitting there going, "That's a weird looking truck," and he's like, "Yeah, but when most militaries wouldn't use a truck like this, but when the trees are falling and you got to get over it and you're trying to, he goes, you need something that can." So anyways, and it was really nice to see him talking with all those people. So we are definitely going to the live chat is definitely getting out of control. It's the in-time live chat. I for some reason deliberately hire mod that actually just poke the bear in the live chat until everything's just on fire. So as I was saying, we are going to have tomorrow 6 p.m. Eastern. He's former thank you, 6:30 Eastern, staff sergeant with the Israeli Defense Force, and he's got a lot to say. And I think he's got a lot of very interesting things to say about his perspective on the feelings and the diversity of feelings of the Israeli people over what's going on, the diversity of feelings of the people that he met while he was patrolling in the West Bank and in the Gaza Strip, the current situation with Hezbollah, and dear Lord, I'm going to have to stop taking your meds. I mean, I like them. I get to see the what is it? I get to see the pretty unicorn, but Hamas. Yes, it's Hezbollah and Hamas. I is a college graduate. Anyways, I think that's going to be a good show. We're going to be doing that tomorrow, and then at some point, Greg, aside from being a pastor, seems to be a masochist because he said he wants to do a project with us and he was going to have us on. We would be delighted to have him on our show. So hopefully we will be able to get that done. Dick, if you've seen what I said about you earlier in the show, then I apologize. I was drunk. I didn't mean a word of it. If you haven't seen earlier what I said about you in the show, please put in a good word for me with Greg so that he knows I'm a good guy. But don't talk to him if you saw the. I'm just saying. So, was there anything else? I think I had asked you if we were on the last thing. And again, this is our hair down show. Normally, we're at least a little bit more professional. A little.
We try.
We try.
Sometimes we even succeed.
Yeah, if we do, it's usually by accident. Anyways,
Yeah.
So any final thoughts before we go, aside from the headache that you're going to have next week in advance, which I can't blame you for. I don't know why. I was just obsessed with the hippo story.
Covered all the key elements that need to be discussed today.
All right.
I think we're good.
All right. Well, thank you all very much, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow, 6:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, for our interview live with a Israeli former member of the Israeli Defense Force, who is going to discuss with us both elements of the military culture, what is going on in Israel and between Israel and its neighbors. Thank you all very much for joining us. Join us on the Discord too if you'd like to learn a bit more about what we do, how we do it, and including our breaking news programs, which I think are truly unique, and you can learn more about how and what we do there. Thank you all for joining us, and we will see you tomorrow night.